Hey there, Maverick. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dig into big dreams, bold moves, and the million lessons along the way. This is our check-in, just you and me crafting and claiming a life that is fully yours. So this is an exciting day. I'm so thrilled to officially welcome you to the Miss Maverick podcast. Starting a podcast has been a goal of mine for years, and honestly, I just got tired of waiting on myself. So today, I made the decision. I picked a name, I designed a graphic, and about 30 seconds ago, I took a deep breath and hit record. Isn't it wild how someday can turn into today the moment we decide to just go for it? So that's exactly what this is, going for a dream that's been on a list and making it a reality. So I thought the best way to start episode 1 would be talking about what it really means to be a maverick and why I chose this name for a podcast. I remember back when I was a kid and people used to call me Little Miss Maverick. Usually it was when I was doing something a little ornery. They'd say it with a smirk or a wink, so I was never quite sure if it was a compliment or if I was one step away from getting in big trouble. But I was never trying to stand out or cause a scene or challenge authority. I was always just being me. So for most of my life, I didn't understand that I was going against the grain, and I didn't really understand what a blessing that would be in my life. Again, I was always a challenger, pushing the boundaries, but it always seemed so built into me. I can think back of times when seeing the world through this unique lens felt very isolating. From the outside, I probably looked a little bit reckless, but deep down, I know this is something that I can't just switch on and off. It is much deeply hardwired than that. So being a maverick isn't just a label or a phase, it is truly a way of life. It's this indescribable feeling of being alive when you take risk, when you stand out, or when you stand up for something that you believe in. So, I'm no historian, but I did do a little research, and the word maverick doesn't have a deep Latin meaning or biblical roots, but it also isn't pulled out of thin air. It actually came from a pretty incredible man. A man's name that has come to mean so much than he or his family, I'm sure, could have ever imagined. And so I want to tell you that story today. It all starts in the early 1800s in South Carolina. A baby is born named Samuel Augustus Maverick, who was born to a very well-to-do family back in that time. And from the start, there were really high expectations set for him. His family assumed he'd follow in their father's footsteps, taking over the family business and maintaining the life they'd built. But Samuel, well, he had other ideas. Rather than following this smooth, predictable path that was easily laid out for him, he decided to break free and seek something more daring, see something different, and truly make a life of his own making. So, in a move that left his family totally stunned and probably a little pissed off, Samuel packed up everything he had and headed for Texas. Now, Texas back then wasn't the land of barbecue joints and live music like we think of today. Instead, it was raw and wild and filled with both danger and opportunity. But that's exactly what drew him in. For Samuel wasn't looking for an easy life. He was looking for a life with purpose. When he was about 35, Samuel made his way to San Antonio. And this was a time just when things were getting heated with the Texas Revolution. While most people were wary of buying land during such a hard time, Samuel saw an opportunity where others only saw risk. He swooped up as much land as he could get his hands on, holding on to the idea that you should buy when no one wants it and sell when everyone does. And honestly, that is still great advice to this day. So his boldness paid off, quickly making him a respected figure in his town. But as most drivens, Samuel wasn't content with just being a successful landowner. He believed in something bigger. In his soul, he knew he was built for more. So he joined the Alamo and even signed the Texas Declaration of Independence, putting his life on the line for freedom. He wasn't a man who sat back when he saw something worth fighting for, and even when it was dangerous, he stood up for his beliefs. When opposing troops marched into San Antonio, Maverick rallied. He rallied a small band of men who took to the rooftops to defend their city. But despite their best efforts, they were outnumbered and captured. These men were forced on an awful 1,000-mile march to a prison in Mexico. The authorities tried to break him, offering over and over his freedom if he would just sign a document reversing the independence of Texas. Of course, most men would have taken this offer, but Samuel Maverick was no ordinary man. He refused. And even though it meant staying in that prison for years, he held strong. When he was finally released, he returned to his home a hero. It's a great story, right? But even with that story, we wouldn't know his name. We wouldn't be talking about him today. So it all came down to the next part, which was about cows. Samuel had a neighbor who was unable to pay back a debt of about $1,200. So this neighbor offered Samuel a herd of 400 cattle instead. Now, Samuel had no interest in ranching and certainly didn't want to manage cows, but he was a good businessman, and it was either accept the cattle or walk away empty-handed. So he did what probably most of us would do. He shook the guy's hand and now had cattle. But he was a busy guy and he paid little attention to cattle, for this wasn't where his heart was. Everyone in the town kept telling him that he needed to brand these cattle. You know, where you heat up the iron and put it on their side, marking them to be your property. Samuel didn't like this idea of ownership. He really felt like everything worked in an ecosystem together, and the idea of branding his cattle just never sat well. So he didn't do it. Over and over people would say, well, this is what you do. And he said, well, this isn't how I do it. So as time went on, those 400 cattle roamed freely across the Texas prairies. They were unmarked and wild. And pretty soon, any unbranded cow on the open range became known as a maverick. This term, once saved for cattle, soon became a term used for anyone who defies convention, who's willing to live outside the lines, who follows their own path. So, that's the story. When you hear the word maverick, remember Samuel Maverick, a man who did things his own way, but not just to be different, but because he believed in the path he was carving out. I think it's a little ironic that the name Maverick came from a cow being unbranded. Nowadays, I spend the majority of my time making powerful brands. Both for my clients and for my own companies, it's all about making your mark. So I do love that those two things are tied together in the most ironic and opposite ways. But being a maverick means daring to see things different. To me, it's not by accident, but it's with intention. I believe the word is a badge of honor, a compliment, but it's also a reminder to leave your mark on the world, no pun intended, but doing things your own way. A maverick is who I've always been, but only now am I able to step into it fully with confidence and a smile on my face. It's a beautiful thing that the more I embrace my unique wiring, the more I lean into my neurodivergent mind, the more I celebrate the way my brain and I see this world, the more the world opens up to me. It's the difference between walking into a networking event in a sensible black pair of flats and switching them out into a shiny red pair of cowboy boots or a show-stopping pair of heels. Suddenly, I'm strutting down an invisible runway. I'm standing taller, probably still only around 5'3" or 5'4", but I'm unapologetically myself. And I will tell you, this new level of freedom has led to some unforgettable stories. From sealing big deals that hit big, to watching others crash and burn, to making hires that changed everything, and fires I'd rather forget. I've experienced trips that took me to private islands with celebrities, and I've had days where I was covered in drywall dust from head to toe. Every single day looks different, but I wouldn't trade any of it. There's a saying that says no one likes a boring-ass story. Well, I can promise you this. There's nothing boring about a Maverick's journey. So here we are, kicking off Miss Maverick. A space to share it all. I know I have enough content to fill road trips and sleepovers and hopefully an awesome podcast that will inspire, entertain, and maybe even light a fire under you to carve a path of your own. So this podcast, well, it's for me, and it's for you, and it's for anyone who's ready to claim the Maverick spirit and go all in. All right, Maverick, until next time, go out there and create, claim, and conquer the life you are here to live. And remember, I've got your back.